Okay, so now you're talking about risk, right?
I've blown accounts.
As you talk about risk, a lot of people don't want to get involved into stock because they feel like that's just risky business, right?
Exactly.
So now, what's a mentality that you could kind of explain to us as how important it actually is, and maybe you should be afraid of not getting involved as opposed to, I'm throwing my money away. You know, we mentioned gambling in a joking way earlier, but some people really feel like, what? I'm going to give my money to someone and they're going to make the decision as to whether I make it or lose it, and I'm not involved. And, you know, especially for people who work really hard for their money, they might not be able to, you know, swallow the fact that I'm not in control of this here money.
Right.
What would you say to people like that to maybe settle their heart or mind to say, this is not what you think it is, and let's educate you to it?
That's a really great question. Because a lot of this stuff really just comes down to the individual, how much risk they can tolerate. So it's called a risk aversion. So with myself, I think I'm a little bit more riskier compared to the average like trader and investor. And so I will probably set big positions on my trades relative to my account, but you have to be disciplined on like, what are you willing to lose? So that's the question you should be asking yourself. And then based on the stock you're owning, you can look at it, you can tell this is the downside and this is the upside. So once you understand risk reward ratio, and you just have to like break down, show that person like this is like everything's a probability. Like that's basically how you win in the stock market. Once you understand the probability of a winning trade or the losing trade, and then it starts to get a little bit more, you become more comfortable, whatever, because you just have to do the research on the company to figure out, is it really worth my money?
So that means whatever the media might say about your company can also plummet your stock.
Yeah.
So I see now why, if you've ever seen, they'll talk about how traders or whatever are kind of watching out for what the president does and what a war is doing. And now I'm starting to understand why that plays such a role
in the stock
into people's decision making, where people kind of get nervous at times.
You have to, you have to be aware with what's going on in the world. You have to be aware what's going on locally, in your state, federal, your country's, your country's neighbor, and all that stuff. You have to be aware of what's going on in the world.
Oh, wow.
And some of the stuff is like, some of the news is like, it's fear mongering. So I feel like they use a lot of that to scare people out of their shares, and it's called weak hands. If you're like, oh, that means you weren't really in it for the long haul. If you're just going to like sell your shares because you were spooked out, and then the stock just goes back up.
Wow.
So I feel like, in my opinion, like the media sometimes, that's why I really don't like listening to mainstream financial media. It's good if you're beginning. If you're learning, I watch it. But if you're really like, sometimes I don't like to listen to the news. I tune it out. Like,
you know what you're doing.
You're right. I trade the news. I don't really like buy into it. I just trade the news and I sell it.
Understood.
So sometimes it's probably best to just weather the storm, huh?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. If you really believe into it. So, it just depends.
Okay.
So for my new person coming in that has that $2,000, and wants to invest, I guess the best thing to kind of say to them is, because, there is a risk factor to it and there's no running from it, is to set aside money that you're willing to lose. Maybe to prepare that cash and say, this is my stock cash. This is my play around money. And I think that gives you the confidence that you need.
That's how I started. Blew all my accounts.
Right. Because it's hard if you're playing with your light bill.
That's true.
Money
That's
and
true.
your rent money.
This is my car payment right here.
Yeah.
Hopefully it brings back some.
Could you imagine checking your stock and it goes down, man? You'd have a bad attitude the rest of the day if you knew that was your rent money. Like, I just threw in my rent money, man. I don't want to talk to nobody right now. So it sounds like it looks like the best thing to do is to first develop a bit of cash for the sake of investing for someone who has that risk factor. Because I know once again with myself, I was okay with losing $5 to $10.
Yeah.
And slowly I started throwing more money in. And so I realized my confidence grew more and more the more I was involved and kind of knew what I was doing. So now this element he's brought to us today about how they intentionally might say something on the news, so essentially bully you into getting lost so it can go. That's a strategy. That's another level right there. I'm still an amateur, but just you saying that made me go, what? I didn't know they do that.
And sometimes the news will boost the stock. Even if it's BS or if it's real or not, it doesn't matter. Like the news, vaccine. Okay, well, Wall Street, they pump the stocks up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, their stimulus check. Oh, they didn't do the deal. Stocks go down. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
In my opinion, I just feel like it's manipulation. It's a lot of manipulation in the stock market. So you have to learn how to play the game that they're playing.
Right.
Yeah.